Hey team, this video is here for you in case you need some nudges in the right direction on each of the variable operation tasks from class today. You might be able to figure everything out without this help, but this video will show you a little more about how to think about some of these tasks so that you can complete them on your own. I'm not going to completely do them for you, but I will give you some important hints that might, again, nudge you in the right direction. So let's start with the Gradebook Fun page of the playground, which you can see here. You can see that we have a bunch of grades all in a row defined as vars. And this task has an error on the line defining average grade. You can see that red dot. And it says this is because average grade is a double and the other grades are ints. So we'll fix that. The second error, the average calculation is incorrect, so we have to work on that calculation. And the last thing to do is to adjust the grades until the average is 90. So we're looking for average grade to be 90. So first thing, average grade is a double. You can see that here. And this is because we want the average to actually be a decimal. Average, we may want to keep it as a decimal because it might not be rounded to a clear number. So one way that we can force variables to all calculate correctly. So one way we can handle this is by wrapping each of these variables as a double. Let me show you how we do this. I can say double, parenthesis, and then math grade. And so that'll turn math grade into a double. And then I can do double around science grade as well. And you can see that the error disappears. We'll run the code. And now we can see that when we print this out, we get 4,800, clearly an incorrect average calculation. But that at least takes care of that issue. The other easier way that we can handle this, we undo that calculation, is we can just define this as an integer. Okay, and now we can see that the error goes away. This calculation is not correct. Let's think about how we do a calculation of an average in general. So let's say I have three numbers, and I want to find the average of these three numbers together. Normally, the way I would do this is I would take these three numbers, add them together, and divide by the number that are there. So let's use that using the operations in Swift to add numbers together. So this will add the first two numbers together, and then this will add in the 96 as well. Just like in arithmetic, this does one operation at a time between two numbers. So this is going to add 77 and 81, find the answer, and then add in the 96. So it's going to march its way using the order of operations that you learned in algebra. I now want to take this entire number and divide it by the number of numbers, which is 3. To make order of operations function correctly for this, I'm going to wrap it in parentheses, and then I'm going to divide by 3. And now if I run the code, you can see that this gives us an average of 84. In general, it's a good idea to try to define the type. So your task is to fix this calculation so that the average grade is correctly calculated. Here's the next page. We have 4 variables, each one's an integer. And the goal is to make all 4 variables result in a print statement displaying an answer of 42. Right now, if you take all 3 of these, we have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and we get 10, which is not 42. If I make this 30, and I run the code, I can let Swift do the calculation for me, and sure enough, this gets us to 37, so we're not quite there. I'm just looking for you to change these numbers around so that you get 42. You could just use addition, but you can also experiment with some of the other operators in Swift and see if you can still get this final answer right here, the print result, to be 42. As you can see here, don't make any variables 0, that's just boring. The next task. This is looking for you to add different strings together. If I run the code as is, you can see that it combines laughter and spreads together in one. But what we would like to do is make it so that we actually have a space between laughter and spreads. We need to somehow get a space in there without changing these strings directly. Let me throw something in here. I'm going to put in an exclamation point and add that in just to see what the result is when I do that. So if you look at this, there's now an exclamation point after the word laughter. We can also look at the value of this variable using the viewer and see that this is all still smashed together as a single mishmash of letters. This hopefully gives you a little bit of a hint of what you could do to actually solve this. And your goal is to put all 4 of those words together into one. Your next task is to get you to work with Boolean variables. Boolean type has either true or false. And so Boolean operators let you combine these values using words like not, and or. And so you can see here that I've done this with 2 Boolean variables involving soup is too hot, saying false, and soup is too salty, true. And you can see how I have used these Boolean operators in 3 different situations. When I say soup is too hot as a Boolean variable is defined as false, that means the soup is not too hot. And if I say soup is too salty as true, it means that the soup is too salty. With this Boolean operator in the middle, it means the soup is not too hot and the soup is too salty. So putting those together, too hot and too salty will be false. We can see that when we run the code. And so your task here is to make your own variables that are Boolean. Come up with some situation that relates to something important to you. This last task is the combination of what we did in the previous task and trying to put multiple Boolean variables together. You can see I've defined some variables related to Nora and the conditions under which we will show her a movie. So there are a few of these altogether. What we want to be able to do is write a statement that combines all of these values correctly so that we'll show a movie variable prints out correctly. I describe this situation up here. I say Nora generally gets to watch a movie if she takes a nap and she eats a good lunch and she puts away all her toys. But the other situation that we sometimes do is, even given she hasn't done all these things, sometimes we just break the rule and we let her watch a movie anyway. So your task is to use operators to correctly show the result of all of those things together. So see what you can do.